Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, a show for women entrepreneurs who want to build, grow, and lead successful businesses and high-performing teams. I'm your host, Lindsay White, leadership coach and people strategy expert, here to bring you unplugged conversations with a variety of amazing guests who share expert advice and real actionable people strategies for your growing business. Ready to get unplugged? Let's jump in. Okay, awesome. Welcome everyone to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. This week, I have such a great guest with me. I have Elizabeth from Quilter's Candy, and I'm super excited to be chatting with her today. We actually just recorded for her podcast, so we're double ending the conversations today, which is great because usually I only get an hour to talk with someone, and today I get a couple hours. Elizabeth started her entrepreneurial journey pretty early. She was 8 when she started going door to door selling homemade mouthwash. I love that. I think that is super cute. So clearly the entrepreneurial bug happened so early with you. And now I know that you have such an incredible following and business that is all about quilting. And you can't see, but in her background is her beautiful studio where she creates all sorts of incredible stuff. Really, really beautiful patterns and colors. I love the way that you bring all of that together. I love fabric. I'm not a quilter or a sewer, so I have a real appreciation for the design and like the engineering that actually goes into quilting. So thank you so much for coming on the show and being a guest today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, I ask all my guests to start with, about their journey to becoming a female founder. And clearly, you started very early in your own neighborhood. I love that. I love that you were bit with the bug as a kid. You know, tell us about that and how it's developed to where you are today.
Yeah, I guess I've always well, growing up, I had to earn money if I wanted to buy something, I had to pay for it
Yeah.
myself. And so
Yeah.
out of necessity, I always had a job. But not only that, I've always looked at something and thought, how could I kind of be at the top of that rather than working for someone? How
Mm,
could I own that?
mm,
And even if I walk into, like, I don't know, Little Caesars and I see how it's functioning, I'm like, man, this could be so much more efficient if they just did it, like I just am always
mhm.
thinking about efficiency, how to run things better and that kind of a thing. So I mean, I studied English literature in college. I taught education, junior high, which was rough.
Wow.
And then I just did a bunch of, like, I taught swimming lessons. Opened my own tutoring company. I thought maybe start a makeup line for tweens. And I had a friend and a neighbor when I was in my early 30s. And my best friend, I'm like, well, let's start a business together. And what should we do? No idea. We'll figure out something.
I
And
love it.
so her mom came, I live in Houston, and her mom came to Houston for this market. And I was like, what? No, what does your mom do? She's like, oh, she designs fabric. She's a quilter. I was like, oh.
Mm,
Come year 2, she came to this market again. And I was like, hold on. Can I come to this market? I want to see what your mom does. She's clearly very busy and successful. I'm just intrigued. So
mm.
we went to this quilt market and it blew my mind. At that time, I had a fashion blog going, and the makeup
Mm.
tween thing. I've always loved beautiful things and textures. And I went to this quilt market and all the fabrics, and they were making shoes and clothing and quilts and wall decor. And it was very cool.
Wow.
Like, my mind just, and her mom was like one of the top fabric designers in the industry. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. We're looking for like a niche, a market. There's one right here in front of us. It's huge. There's a lot of money being spent, billions of dollars in this industry, and we have an
Yeah.
insider who's very successful. Let's do something in this little market. So we started a monthly subscription box for quilters. And then I was like, well, I better learn how to quilt because I have a business in this. So I learned how to quilt. And the more every month we would curate and look for just the coolest, most like boutique things to put in the box, including fabric and quilt patterns. And the more I did that, the more that brain of like, oh, I can do that. I was like, wait a minute, I can write quilt patterns. And I like that business model better. You create it once and you sell it indefinitely online. It lives online. And then from a physical product, I went to a digital membership. Again, not having to upfront buy the products and do the manual labor. And there's no cap. Like I was capping my growth, or either I had to buy a warehouse and a team to package all these. I was like, oh, let's do a different business model. This is way better. And so it just went all digital. And so it's kind of morphed into that.
Wow. I love that. What a cool journey. And just continually reinventing the way you do it.
Hmm.
That's super nifty.
Yeah, it's really fun. Well, it's weird now. I'm at a place in my business, and we talked a bit on my
Yeah.
podcast where I'm really evaluating what I'll do moving forward because I've gotten a lot of success. I've changed things. I just recently sold my membership because it wasn't my passion. And so now
Mhm.
I'm at this place where I'm like, what exactly? Now I get the freedom and the luxury to decide, what do I just absolutely love? What do I want to do for fun? And do I want to scale and grow it? And if I do, I will have to bring people on. And so just really sitting back and looking at all these pieces and deciding what I want to do and if I want to do it, how to do it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, what an exciting place to be at. Like, I think for many of us, that is exactly where we would like to be, especially as we're in the trenches, growing and scaling. You're a little bit on the other side, and that is so thrilling to hear. And the possibilities are just endless from there.
Yep.
Right? So we'll totally get into that because I love that's a beautiful problem to solve.
Yes.
Um, so and I want to ask you, like, when you think about um how far you've come and all the different things that you've done, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
I learned pretty early on that the money is one of the least important things. It will come, but when you don't put
Mm,
it first, if you're putting the money first, it shows and you shoot yourself in the foot. I just remember a few
mm,
times I was so nervous at first about, am I going to be lucrative? Am I going to make ends meet? That when someone wasn't happy with a product or there was an issue, I was so caught up in like, I can't give a return. I can't lose money. And it was not the right move. And I learned real quick when they were upset and like, you should really just give a return here. It was just however it played out. I was like, that wasn't the right move. That was very short-sighted. And
mm.
to really put the customer first. And sure, there's one bad egg that's going to maybe take advantage of your niceness,
Right.
but overall, it's going to be a good thing to just put the customer first and give a really great value.
Well, and I mean, I certainly hear in that ultimately it didn't align with some of your personal values, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah, that's
that
very
there
true.
yeah, yeah. That there were some things that you would have just done differently because you recognize that just wasn't in alignment, right?
Yeah, very insightful. You feel like you have a crystal ball and you read right through that. I'm like, yes.
No, well, that is one of my special talents, but I think that's such a beautiful lesson though, is that it is so critical that we are aware of our values personally and then how they show up in our business, right? Because of course what we value is going to play a role in the business's values. But that when we really pay attention to that, we really understand what those values actually mean and how we use them, how they show up in our behavior. That's where we feel really great
Yep,
about our relationships and our interactions, right? And
yep.
I actually think that is so key, and it is something that gets missed a lot, right? We get into business plans and operating models and revenue streams, like all of that, and actually it's the values and the behaviors that make those things actually real and important and function properly.
That
Does
is
that
so beautiful and well said. Yes. Like,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. This is really great. It's the values. Like, what is driving this boat here, And I will say, like, I being on social media, the more you are visible, the more you will
Mhm.
have people who love and don't love you. And that's part of
Yeah.
being a business owner. You want to be not like you don't want to go out and be controversial or whatever, but you will be polar. You're for some people and you're not for others. And some people handle the not being for you a little bit less than we'd hope. But when your values, when you come from a place of value and you know that what you offer is good quality and the way you handle it, you
Yes.
are in alignment with, you can really let that wash off your back and be like, it's okay. We don't see eye to eye. It doesn't make us bad or right or wrong. It's just a difference of how we view things, and that's okay, you know?
Yeah, I love that actually. That is such a great way to leverage your values because you're right. We're not going to be for everybody. Um, we want to be for the people that really get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the vibe, right? For lack of a better
Yep.
way to put it, that we really have the same vibe, we really have alignment. And then yeah, when we're not for that other person, it doesn't it doesn't make us feel like we're less than or we're not good enough because we recognize that it is okay that there isn't alignment over there. So I really appreciate that because you're right. I think that that can be really hard. We're really passionate about whatever the product or the service. We love it. That's why we do it full time.
Right. Yep.
But so we can take it really personally when
Mm-hmm.
someone's like, I don't agree with you, or I don't think this is right, or this didn't work for me. Man, we
Mm-hmm.
can really internalize that if we're not careful.
Oh yeah. Well, and we're businesses and we're selling. And some people get, I especially find as females, other females come
Mm.
real hard at us. Like, how
Yeah.
could you offer that? How could you charge that much for this? Or whatever it might be about our business. And just realizing we're in alignment with with, and really trusting that you have a good product, but showing up with empathy and love, which I guess that's a value of mine. But
Yeah.
anyhow, yeah.
No, but I even think, you've said a couple times trusting that you have a really great product or a really great service, right? That
Mm-hmm. Yep.
you add incredible value. And
Yep.
I think like even that speaks to the to your own personal values. And it
True.
certainly resonates with me. And I think with a lot of female business owners, what I want to do things with my customers that actually really enhance their world or their life or their productivity. And I have an expertise, I have experience. I want to use that and I want to do that in a way that helps others. I think that's what the majority of us are all about, no matter what
Yep.
we sell, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And we want to do that in a way that we get to feel good too.
Yeah. Well, and it's very
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, and but in the world we live in, we don't see a lot of really successful females. We don't have a lot
Mhm.
of great, I think Sarah, what's her name, the owner of Spanx, Sarah
Blakely.
Blakely.
Yeah.
She's one of the very, very few female billionaires. We can see tons of like bro marketing and all of that, but like, so I think as females, we kind of get uncomfortable. Like I've seen people just get really uncomfortable with the fact that another female is owning that they are a leader and stepping up and raising their hand and saying, I'm a leader in this space and I feel
Mm.
like I have value to bring. A lot of other females get really uncomfortable with that and lash out at that a little bit. And so I think just being aware of that and like,
Mhm.
it's okay. It's okay. That happens. It doesn't mean that they're true, or that you
Mhm.
aren't. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I love that you sort of brought the leadership into it because we don't just lead in our business, right? Whether we have a team, we lead ourselves first. Like leadership
Hmm.
is really an inside job. And I mean, we just had this discussion on your podcast. So often, as female founders, we don't think of ourselves as a leader. Even when we start to add team, whether they're employees or contractors, we still don't see ourselves as a leader. And in fact, I think we do ourselves a bit of a disservice because we're a thought leader, we're a design leader, we lead our clients. Certainly, they look to us for
Hmm.
leadership. So, yeah, whether we know it or not, we are absolutely leading. And the first person we have to lead is this person right in the mirror, right? We got to lead
This is
ourselves first.
so interesting. I had such a disconnect. So I would assume everyone has this in some fashion or another. We feel comfortable leading in one area, but not another. So I'm very comfortable
Mhm.
leading. I have a podcast. I'm comfortable showing up on social media, having a webinar. And as soon as you talk about you're a leader with your team, I'm like, oh no, 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 but like, I,
Interesting.
I know that was such when you were like, that was just such a disconnect for me. Like, wait, but you are a leader and you're comfortable with that. So just carry that over to your team. Very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, this is super cool. What a revelation
Yeah.
right here in the podcast. I love that. I love that. So, okay, let me ask you this then. When you think about yourself leading sort of more in that external context,
hmm
leading in the thought space, leading your clients, how do you show up? What defines your leadership in that space, do you think?
Very real and authentic. And
Mhm.
we've talked about that. I don't want to come across as like I'm totally perfect and I have it all together. I
Mhm.
feel
Mhm.
confident that I know the things that I'm teaching, but I will
Mhm.
never pretend like I don't make a mistake or, if there's a
Right.
typo, I'm like, that's
Right.
okay. We all.
Yeah.
So that's important. And then what was the question? How do I show up or
Yeah, like I'm just curious about how you see yourself as a leader externally, and then
Mm.
thinking about how do you bring more of that to your internal leadership in your organization?
Yeah, because I guess the things that intimidate me about being a leader of an organization is the structure. And like, I feel like
Oh,
I'm very flighty or ADD, ADHD. And so
mhm.
to have people be accountable, but I figured it out in my business. I have systems
Yeah,
in place that like, I figured it out.
yeah.
So clearly I'm capable. There's just some, there, it's definitely like an internal, it's very much, I go back to this being a business owner is such an inside job. Like it is
Mhm.
the mindset. It's like therapy. Here I am. I feel like I'm in a therapy session, like because it's really owning being a leader and stepping into some uncomfortable areas. But like, I got this. I can do this.
Mhm. I say that to myself every day. I got this. I got this. Right? I can handle
hmm
this. I totally get it. And I do this work, right? Like this is what I do is coach female founders and help them be great leaders and build really great teams. But I struggle with the same mindset issues, right?
hmm
And it really is that internal trash talk, that voice in your own head that says in some way shape or form that you might not be enough. That is the thing that is so hard, because it's in your own brain. And
Yeah.
I work with it every single day because as business owners, that's what that trips us up.
Well, and it's interesting because even telling you like, I'm nervous that I'm going to drop the ball or I'm not going to be organized or da da
Mm.
da. That's the kind of trash self-talk that I'm like,
Mhm.
Elizabeth, you figured it out with your course, you figured it out, you show up consistently here and there and there. Like, why do you feel like you can't figure it out there?
Well, and I think, the same reflection. Why do you think you're such an effective leader externally? You've clearly built something that's very successful. What's so intimidating about leading with more intention inside your business, right? Because
Hmm.
clearly you're capable of it.
Yeah. Do you see this?
Yeah.
Is this a common thing that people struggle with?
Yeah, it is. It's something I didn't I've been doing this now for about 6 years, almost 6 years. And it was something that I learned just a couple years ago is that so many female founders really don't identify with that label leader. And I thought it was so curious. And so it's been a part of my conversations, very present over the last 2 years. Why? Why don't we see ourselves as leaders in our business? We know we're an expert. We know we are highly skilled. We know what we add has great value. But for some reason, we don't make the connection as we grow and scale our business and how we need to lead internally,
Mhm.
particularly how we need to lead ourselves. And so I don't know that I have all the answers, but I think a great deal of it does have to do with this inside conversation, this judgy trash talk that we all have. Our saboteur is what I
Mhm.
call it. And it does, it tries to convince us that somehow we are not capable. And that is just so not the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so fascinating. I just feel empowered seeing where I've had success as a leader in other areas. Like, you can do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, very interesting.
I do think that that's a space where, and like shameless plug, where having working with a coach can be really powerful. And let me be clear, I do my own work. I have
Mhm.
my own therapist and I have my own coach. Everybody even Michael Jordan needed a coach, okay?
Yep.
Um but I think the problem is you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? So
Yep.
we aren't always capable of having the true reflection of who we are and what we create. We need someone to help us see that. We also need someone to help us understand what that conversation is in our head. Because, it's so interesting as I work with clients, they often don't hear it. They
Mhm.
don't really like it's so embedded that you don't hear it very clearly. And in order to actually understand what's going on, you got to hear it. As painful as that sounds, you've
It's
got to
true.
understand what is your trash talk. And it's going to be different for every one of us. Mine sounds different than yours, right? But I think that that's actually the key is having someone help you interpret that and see how awesome you really are and where you need some support, where you got some growth to do.
Yeah. I mean, it is fascinating that, like, every person who I've hired to help me, they also hire someone to help them with the exact same thing. And like, I teach people how to do certain things, but we are way too up close to our own selves.
100%.
And yeah,
Yeah.
we're blind. We have our blind spots. And so, and even, I mean, even I will say things and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. And then someone will be like, oh, that's where you're doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I know this thing and I'm doing it, you know?
Yeah, we need the perspective. We need to have trusted advisors and that can give us that perspective, can give us that feedback, right? The feedback
Yeah.
is critical, and some of it's positive feedback, "Hey, you're doing a great job," and some of it is constructive feedback, "Hey, there's a place here that you need to work on." Like, we can't grow if we don't get that, and as an entrepreneur and a female founder, we are operating in a bit of a vacuum, right?
Hmm.
Like, we're at the head of our own organization. Often we're working by ourselves. I mean, even if we have a team, they're often virtual.
Yep.
So you have to go out and intentionally find that person who can give you that great feedback because otherwise, man, you're just sitting in your home office all by yourself most of the time.
And usually for my business, if I am like, why didn't that work? I'll go to the areas that I'm good at and I'll look at it and be like, how can I make that better? Well, that's not the area that needs improvement. It's an area that I don't even understand, you know, and I need someone else to come in
Yeah.
and point out an area like, oh gosh, I didn't even know to look at that, you know?
That is such a great point. I love that. You're right. Because we not only do we not maybe not recognize that that's not our, but we also, I mean, sometimes can be a little painful. Let's be
Hmm.
honest. We are programmed to avoid the pain.
Yep.
Um, so that made me think of something, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but I see female entrepreneurs all the time that when there is stress in their business, whether the stress is the business is growing or the stress is that the business is contracting, what they do is they go to what they do best. So
Yep.
they go back down into the weeds, they go back down into the work, and they actually stop leading in a meaningful way. They
Yep.
get so caught up in the process and the execution that they don't lift their head up to see what's ahead. You're nodding and you've said yes. So this resonates. Is this something you've
Oh yeah.
experienced?
So, like, this will sound crazy because most people don't like this. I love Instagram. For me, I like to create reels. And so, and I get immediate gratification. I post it and
Mm,
people like it. So when things don't go well in my business, I default to, oh, I need to go create some more content for social media. Most likely that's not the case because I'm doing it, like it's going well. So there's another area of my business that's not going well. And I probably don't know what that is. And so to have someone from the outside come and look and be like, hey, have you thought about da 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 da? Like, oh, so the thing we're doing well at, we're doing well, So there's
Uh,
another area. And if that's also my default with like, just, I mean, life, if I'm stressed or whatever, I go to that instant gratification, to that instant, like, let's post
okay.
that, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to leaning into, I should probably really send out that newsletter and work on, or whatever.
Yeah.
Probably the area we shy away from is the area that we really need to focus on.
I certainly see that. And I see that, I mean, you going and posting another reel is not damaging your business. Actually, in fact, I would argue it's probably adding a great deal of value. But ignoring the thing that really needs your attention and is a strategic priority, that's probably not awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly see female leaders that they actually get in the way of their team executing. Right? They start messing around in things. They become the bottleneck in their
Yep.
business because every decision has to come through me. I have to control all of it because I feel out of control. So
Yep.
now I'm going to control the shit out of the thing that I really can, right? And the team gets frustrated and they get overwhelmed and decisions don't get made. Okay, so this is something that I certainly see and I appreciate. I think we just all have a different way of doing it, but we can get caught in that cycle. It's pretty easy.
Well, okay, I've seen that. This is one of those where like you can see it in other people. I'd be very curious to hear what my team has to say, but at the same time, like, ooh, I don't know. But am I more the bottleneck? Because I feel like I'm the other extreme where I'm like hands off and I'm like, you all
Yeah.
just figure it out. I'm like, don't come to me, just do it. But that bites me in the butt for two reasons. Because one, sometimes they don't know what to do. And so nothing was
Mm.
done because I'm not contacting them. And two, sometimes things happen and I'm like, well, that's not what I wanted. And I'm like, well, you didn't really get involved. So that's what you get.
Ah, okay. Thank you for sharing that because that's not actually easy as a business owner and one who has had really incredible success. That's not always easy to admit. So I appreciate you sort of
Oh, thanks.
courageously putting that out there for people to hear.
Yes.
But I love the admission, and I think in our leadership we can be one way or the other, and neither is very good, right?
Mhm.
If we are controlling, if we are micromanaging, that is, we're not allowing the smart people to do their work. And on the other side, if we're not clear about our expectations, if we're not regularly checking in, if we are not course correcting along the way, you're right, we get the result we don't necessarily want. It's not what we had envisioned. The truth is, our team doesn't have a crystal ball, they can't read our
Yeah.
mind. And so, yeah, how do we operate somewhere in the middle of that? Where we give people, and we talked about this on your podcast, the ownership. How do we get them to have ownership, but also have clear direction and insight into what we're looking for? Not necessarily always exact outcome. I want, and sometimes there is, I want this thing done this way on this date because it's important, but
Right.
actually giving them the vision so that they can use all their skill and experience to create for us. Maybe it turns out even better than we had in mind.
Yep. Well, and I
I
think
love that.
too, letting go of some of those little details, which to that first,
Mm.
of like, sometimes it may not be 100% perfect, but having B work is better than no work, like you got to get it out there. And if it's not perfect, it's better to just get it out there. But then I'm more of the like, put it all out there, just do your thing. And then like, wait, no, hold on. So food for thought.
Letting go is hard. Being free is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And when you let go of perfect, which doesn't exist, by the way,
Right.
but when
True.
when you let go, you enable yourself to be free to do a whole bunch of other things, including leading your business in a really intentional and strategic way, right? Like
Yep.
actually executing the business plan, sharing your vision, connecting with your customers. You free yourself up to do the work you really love to do. We talked about that a little bit before. Let's get into that because
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool. Like being enabled as the business owner to actually reinvest your time into the things that you got into the business to do in the first place.
Yep.
That's
Which,
huge.
okay, on this, but this is okay, it's on topic, but there's a podcast that I listen to, and they just actually ended their podcast. And they were saying it takes them like 16 hours to do one episode. And that's one of those where I'm like, oh no, you need to hire that out, like no wonder you're
Mm,
stopping the podcast. That's not sustainable. But how many business owners out there, myself included, are limiting our growth because we're trying to do something that's way better outsourced, where someone else can do that in an hour, and paying them however much an hour is way better
yeah.
than spending 16 hours or having to not provide that service because we can't afford the time.
Yeah, and I think, I think that that is so key. And a lot of the women I work with are in a space like you are, where they're deciding on what the growth looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've reached a level of success. They know there's more out there,
Yeah.
right? And maybe are already experiencing some of that organic growth. But yeah, how do I find the right talent to help me grow in the right way? Have I articulated that appropriately?
Yeah. And I mean, my question is really like, how much do I really want to grow? 'Cause, like when you said freedom is
Mhm.
wonderful, I was like, yeah, like
Yeah,
do I really want to show up, all the time? Like what do I want
yeah.
to do? And trying to really navigate that. Although chatting with you here for this last little bit for my podcast and yours has been a bit of an eye opener where I think I have been kind of shying away from growth for maybe not the right reasons. So I'm gonna have to sit with that a little bit. But I do think there has been some of
Mm.
me that's like, this is uncomfortable. I'd just rather not. But my core value is personal growth. It's not My core value is
Yeah,
not to sit around and watch Netflix all
yeah.
day. So
No, and you know what? I can tell you that not just my clients, but my own network, like we are all highly driven, highly skilled, highly educated, motivated women. We have passion for what we do,
Mhm.
and we love doing it. We want to work in our business. We're not the girls that want to work on a beach and
Right.
never, right? Like I love that aesthetic is
Right.
great. Now, I just spent a week on Myrtle Beach. Did I do some work while I was there and enjoy the beach at the same time? Yes. But I was happy to get back to my
Yeah.
routine, my clients, and my conversation. And so I think you're right. I think that's one thing that we all have in common is that we want to continue to learn and grow. We love what we do. We love the people we work with, and sharing our value. And so, what a great decision to have. How do I want to continue to do that? What does that look like for me?
Yep.
That's a beautiful conversation. And then I think when you make the decision that, yes, I want to grow this business, but I want to do it in a way that honors some of these things. I still want a lot of freedom. I still want a lot of flexibility. Um, then you can start to decide on what's the people strategy to support that. Who do I need? What's the talent, right, to make this happen so that I still get these things that I really want while
Yep.
the business grows. That's the sweet spot, I think.
Yeah. Which I have as we're chatting, I'm like, there are people that came to my mind that I'm like, oh, they're really good at this special skill set that I actually have been really hating. Why don't I reach out and hire them, or explore that? And
Explore it,
mm-hmm.
right? Just have a conversation about it. But yeah, understanding what are the things that I want to do and how do I want to do, like, how do I want my work and my life to blend together? I think that that's such a beautiful conversation as a female business owner that we don't
Yes.
spend enough time on. What's the work life blend I want, right?
And it does, I mean, for the most part, I don't want to make generalizations because it's not true across the board. But at least in my audience, granted, I'm a quilter, so I don't know if it looks different than other areas, but For the most part, the female creative quilterpreneur, as I call it, this is a secondary income. They generally are at home most of the time. It's not like you're going out to the office and working 9 to 5. And I mean,
Right.
it looks different than that typical job. And so that is a really important conversation to have. How do I want this balance to look? And how can I really make sure that I hold myself to that, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It goes right back to those values, right? What are
Hmm.
the things I care about the most? What's most important to me? How do I define that? How do I live that? How do I protect that? Right?
Hmm.
You probably hear a lot, I do too, about, well, I have trouble with boundaries. I have trouble with
Oh,
boundaries.
that has to be a female thing, right?
Way more than men, I'll tell you. I mean, I think some men experience it, but I think it's
Yeah.
definitely a female thing. How do you know what your boundaries need to be if you actually don't know what your values are? If you're not really clear on what you care about, how
Mm.
do you know how to create the boundary that protects it? How do you
How do
know what
you help females? I mean, because I'm just starting to lean into it and maybe a little too much. I'm like, this feels so good to say no. And so I'm like, no, no, no. But
great. No, I love that. So many of us struggle with no. I mean, I think that's pretty deep work. You've got to spend some time and effort and energy on really articulating and thinking very carefully about what do I care about most. It's important to analyze, where do I put my time and attention, right? Though,
Mhm.
if my time and attention is, for example, on my family, well, then that's clearly a big value. Why is that important to you? Well, because they're the people I love the most and they love me and they're unconditional in that love. Doesn't matter how successful I am, how much money I make, how many Instagram followers I have. They love me no matter what. Okay, now what's the boundary that protects that, right?
Mm,
What
this
does
is
that need to
beautiful.
look like for you? Every one of us is going to be different. I just dropped my last kid off at college. Okay.
Oh,
So my family value has evolved. I don't
yeah.
have to look after kids every day anymore. Right? So it's gonna shift and change. How does that value show up in my business? Well, maybe in my business, the value is I don't work on weekends because that's family time. Okay, well, that makes sense then, right? That's the boundary. So when the client says, hey, can we meet on Saturday? The answer is, unfortunately, I'm not available till Monday,
Yep.
right? So
And
I
it is
think
deep work. It is because it's
it's
easier
deep
to
work.
say it, but I cannot tell you how many times myself and others I've seen a set a boundary and they're like, but this person's asking, so I'll make an exception. I'm like, whoa, 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 to
Yeah,
myself and them, like, no, you hold to it. And if they're upset by that, that's on them. That's not you. You like, and they probably aren't
100%.
going to be.
And isn't that the truth? We think they will be upset. We think they will judge us, but in all reality, for the most part, they're very respectful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Monday works.
Yep.
What time? Right? I think that's the problem, is that we don't actually enforce the boundary and we don't give people an opportunity to react. We just make an assumption.
Yep.
But all of that, that's work we have to do as individuals and as leaders of ourselves and in our business. We have to figure that out first.
Yep.
Then we can show up more effectively for all the people that work for us and all the people we work with.
Hmm. This is just so interesting as I'm going through because my oldest is about to go off to college. And I do think that's really affected my sentimentality this last year. I'm like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
oh my, and then I only have a couple more years till all my kids are gone. When they're all gone, it will change completely. Like I want this
Yeah.
business to be here and thriving so that when they are gone, I've got this thing that I can do. But in this little window, I'm like, I want to be a little more heavy on the family side, a little less on the work side. And then that pendulum will swing a
Totally.
little bit.
Totally. And what you're talking about right there is a very thoughtful and intentional and strategic approach to how you're going to blend your work and life together, right? So then you set your business plan up so that, okay, this year and next year, I'm doing these things and this is what my business is going to look like. And then in 3 to 5 years, these are the things I'm going to do because my business can look different. My life is different.
Yeah.
Okay, who are the people I need on the bus? What are the skills and talents I need to do these things at the time that I'd really like to execute them? That's what a business strategy and a people strategy are all about. It's that simple. The execution is slightly more challenging, but that's the
Mm-hmm.
idea, is that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it lines up in the way you want as a business owner.
Beautiful. And it's so funny because I've even been like, I don't need to think about long term. Let's just do. No, as you say that, think about what you want to have. Because I just said I want to be more heavy on the work when the kids are all gone. Clearly, I want to
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
a plan. So,
yeah, totally. And I think this is what happens is I see women that don't think about it because they're like, you know what? We'll just make it work. I love that. Hey, listen, we're all get shit done kind of girls, right?
mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
that's important to how we bootstrap our businesses right from the start. But there is a point at which in your business, as it grows, there's an inflection point where it's absolutely crucial that you start to think more strategically and you start to lead more strategically. Otherwise, your business happens to you
Yep,
instead of for you. And the to you part becomes stressful and anxiety inducing and overwhelming. And it's a straight line to burnout, right?
yep.
Because you are not in control. When you have a strategic approach and you have your leadership lined up, you are far more capable of managing the roller coaster ride that is the entrepreneur life. It's just that simple.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The
Hmm.
ups and downs, and they're going to come no matter which way you approach it. But how do you want to manage it? Man, when you have your leadership straight, when you have a strategy and you know what talent you want and how you're going to engage with them to get the work done, that is far easier to manage.
Well, and I love what you said. It's something like your business happens to you as opposed to, I forget what the opposite. I'm glad this is recorded because I want to go back and
Yeah,
listen
no,
to
no, no doubt. I say things and I'm glad I record them sometimes too.
it.
No,
Yeah.
your business happens to you, right? You don't have a plan. You're making it up as you go along. And that
Hmm.
works to a point. It really
Right.
does, right? Absolutely. But at some point, then the business actually starts to run your life.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the space where we get ourselves in a lot of trouble.
Well, it feels stressful. I can speak to myself. Like, as I've been trying to like do less and less, there is this sort of void. I'm kind of like in the dark, wandering, like, what am I going to do? I don't know. Having a plan really helps make that go away. Like I can have a plan and be very clear. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a lot, but at least know
No,
what you're doing.
none of this has to be complicated. Our beautiful businesses are not that big and extravagant that we need it to be complex. But we need it to be thoughtful and intentional. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the part that you're talking about that you're missing. There's this
Yep.
unknown over here. And it's worrisome. It
Mm-hmm.
bothers you, I can tell.
Yes.
Um, and we, of course, we want to avoid that. We don't like the discomfort in that. But the truth is, actually spending the time, getting a little intentional with it, and yeah, coming up with a very straightforward and simple strategy. You have lots of room left for flexibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got to be nimble, but at least we have some direction. We have some guardrails. I think that gives us great comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so helpful. My gosh, I just feel so empowered and like I can't even thank you enough.
Well, thank you for asking such insightful questions. And I want to honor that you've shown up here and been like really brave about sharing the things that you're going through and the stage that you're at in your business. It sounds really fun and exciting. But yeah, you've got some work to do. There's some decisions to be made, and some processing to do. And I love that you've shown up here and shared that so that I can talk about, how you can go about doing that. I think that's what people really want to hear. That's the unplugged version of this
Hmm.
podcast. So I love it. Thank you so much for
Oh
sharing just
yeah.
so beautifully.
What a treat. I mean, I just really feel like I need to go process and like really sit down and think about this. So again, I'm so
Totally.
glad it's recorded because I definitely going to
100%.
re-listen.
100%. And I'll offer this to you and to anyone that's listening. If you need someone to process with, please reach out, right? I offer everyone 30 minutes in my calendar because I think there's an opportunity to have a great conversation. And if there's more work to be done together, I'm always open to that. I love working with female business owners. That's my passion. But if you just need someone to do some clarifying with, would love that. We'll put the link in the show notes. And how do people find you? Because you've got something really, really cool and creative going on. Where do they find you?
Yeah. So for podcast listeners, I have a podcast called Craft to Career, and it's all things just, I mean, really how to turn a craft, but how to start a career as a creative entrepreneur. And then I'm on Instagram, which, as I mentioned, I love creating reels and all of that. So it's at quilters_candy.
And I love all the reels that you create. I have to say, I
Thanks.
really admire your ability. I feel like that's something that I'm not very good at. And so I follow you regularly and I'm like, how does she do that? We all have our thing, right?
Hey, feel free to take any reel that I do and use the idea.
Okay.
I talk about that on the podcast. Take my ideas. Some people are like, that's my idea. I'm like, oh, don't be silly. Come on now. You can take my idea.
We can share. I love that. I might do that because it's easier sometimes when someone leads the way and then you just modify. So don't be alarmed if I start to do that.
Please do.
I will always give you attribution. Well, thank you again for your time. This has been a really beautiful conversation, really wide ranging, but I hope really impactful for everyone that's listening.
Yes. Thank you so much. I've truly, truly loved it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. I feel so lucky that I get to connect with such amazing female entrepreneurs. And if you enjoyed today's session, would you do me a big favor? Would you hit subscribe and give this episode a 5-star review? I'd also love it if you would share with your friends. We've got a goal here at the Female Founder Unplugged podcast to impact 1,000 female founders. And with your help, we can really amplify the message. Thanks again for being a part of the show. And don't forget to connect with me at highvoltageleadership.ca. We'll see you next week.